trying to kind of buy out Lycos and Exile. Possible buyouts could be then.
Of course, so that
in negative, and there's a that confirms to that. They could also move out beyond the search engine and look at as a solution to provide as a media organization, as a media company, thereby registering revenues through a newer business model.
Okay.
They could promote possibly an e-commerce. Probably in e-commerce is something which has not been dealt with, I felt. There's not much to say that they have done anything on that regard. Since they are anyway, in any case, they had tried out the direct model in terms of marketing, the direct marketing kind of a concept. Probably they could look at some sort of synergies from learnings from direct marketing, where e-commerce could go to a newer level. Something on those lines. That is something which, if the top lines are crucial, I think this is one way of looking at it.
Okay.
The profitability part, I think they're done.
Abhiraman, yes.
Sorry.
So I think what you're saying is makes sense. But then, if I really ask you, what are the steps that you would take here? First, 1, 2, 3 steps when you have to come to a decision, or you have to do the analysis. What is it that you would really want to understand in the industry? What are the various tools that you could actually use? What are the steps that you would actually take to come to a decision? What are those 4 or 5 steps that you'll do? In fact, what you've told me is something like the parameters of evaluation for various things that you could do. Say something like what is the financial impact and so on and so forth. But what are the few steps that you would actually take here?
See, the entire thing revolves around the fact that the entire industry where Yahoo operates is something like a fashion industry which becomes fad, or it's so very fast.
Okay.
So I think what needs to be done is some sort of a synergy spread has to occur, enabling that it's in line with the way the industry operates. It has to be a faster industry, and there is something which I would say that industry evolvement is so very fast. So something on those lines along with the e-commerce. Now I'm not able to build much on that, but something to do with the e-commerce.
So various things that they could do. So you're
industry per se, which is evolving so fast.
So you're giving some options that they can actually
Yes,
do. So what you've done is you've given me some options. One, you've given some parameters for evaluation.
True.
Okay. But still, if I really ask you that whether this company is on the right track, whether what they're thinking is right, like because they're typically talking about 2 or 3 things. One is that they're talking about mergers or the acquisition or alliance or changing the business model or whatever. There are a few suggestions. Do you think it's right to even think about it at this stage? Does it really make sense to even think about it? Or Yahoo is just absolutely beating around the bush?
See, the entire factors which we just discussed are probably external focused.
Okay.
So there is nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong in actually driving a synergy with the external forces. After all,
Okay.
it is the end consumer, customer, who can bring about a change in the organization's perceived objectives. So I really don't see anything wrong in terms of driving the business. I'm not trying to find. I'm not able to really read through whether there is something really wrong on this.
Okay.
It's very nice. It's grown and things alike. So I am feeling that it is more. It could be more in terms of not a strategy per se, but a subset strategy per se, a tactical. Probably certain tactical tools might be necessary to run or keep pace with the industry.
Okay.
That is my feel. But overall, as a strategy, yes, they've done right in terms of focusing on the external parameters. If assumption being they have the right mix of people on board.
Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
So you're talking about internal factors now. So we'll come to these things as we move ahead. So great, Abhiraman. So I'll come back to you during the course of the session. Yes, Rajiv, what do you have to say?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Checkpoint.
Yeah.
Okay. So your question was, what would be some of the things to think about? So I'll try and correlate it with a little bit of own experience of, as an auto components, we have been looking at acquisitions, etc. So I just keep that in at the back of my mind, so I won't answer Yahoo specific, but a little bit in general. So I think the first thing a firm or one of the initial things a firm has to do is to look at its internal situation and see whether it is at a stage where it has met some of its objectives or what it started as. Has it reached a certain scale and size? Can it, call itself successful from an objective standpoint? Whether it has developed some capabilities or some technologies, so every firm starts with a certain objective, market or financial or whatever it is. I mean, and each firm will have its own. The bunch of the 3 startup team of Yahoo had their own also. So without focusing first on the external environment, we must first definitely look at ourselves internally and say, have we reached a certain stage and size that now we have either the capabilities or the desire to go to the next level. Most likely as we look inwards, hopefully the very reason we are looking inwards is the fact that we're probably successful. So hopefully the next thing in front of us would be that we've reached a certain stage. Now, what are our next objectives? Do we want to go international? Do we want to acquire new set of customers? Do we want to diversify in another technology, go forward, go backward? I mean, unless we are a monopoly, we'd already be in a space where there are other players also. So we'll have to then think about, based on the external environment, what are options that we have? Can we continue to grow and meet our objectives organically? Should we look at inorganic? If it is inorganic, is it just, am I driving scale? Am I looking at new technology, new customer? And the answer would be different for each company.
Yes, absolutely.
And the company should really spend a lot of time asking itself, if I'm going for a new geography, is acquisition the way? Is alliance the way? So what I think that, product technology, I mean, we do that in auto components. We try and ask ourselves, India has reached, the industry started sometime in 80s. We've reached a certain scale and size now. We seem to have a cost competitiveness and quality combination. So West is looking at us. So is the way out to go and acquire? Is the way out to have an alliance? And then in the external environment, we also, so those are some of the internal and external, a combination of the two. There are also some business cycle phases when suddenly a lot of opportunities come up from acquisitions. Those are the financial cycles. Liquidity drives some of these things. So while none of us can keep ourselves aloof from what others are doing, but I think it's important to, others can keep pursuing their own strategies, but just aping others may not be a very, or just doing things because everybody is having alliances, so Yahoo should also go ahead and have alliances. I keep going back to the case of, Intel last time or something that we read in Theory of Business, that we also, if the changes in the marketplace are too fast, we have to also sometimes think, especially in this technology-enabled business models, we must also, the set of the owners must also think whether it's time to go out of DRAMs and think of something else, or whether it's time to stick to a portal model. What are the other things we can do? So others may be following these alliances and partnership angle especially in the Yahoo case. So I summarize my point of view: internal, if successful, next set of objectives, and what are our options available to pursue them. And
great.
I
have a question here.
Hopefully,
what you're saying makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense that You have to look at the internal realities and whether the organization is ready for change and so on and so forth. And what are the options that are available outside? But now the question is, how do I actually know that this is the time that I have to really start exploring? What are the changes that are happening outside that could actually trigger me to really start thinking that way? Because if you remember, one of the things that we really talked about the last time, it was the resource-based view and the industrial organization view. So you're bringing these two schools of thought very powerfully. And okay, it is the external environment, it's the internal reality which has to actually gel up together to really decide what the firm should do. But what's the right time to really start looking at this? Is it now, or is it that there is somebody else, there is some kind of a merger or an acquisition that is happening outside, there is some kind of an evolution that is happening outside, there is an external trigger that is actually going to move us towards that thing, or is it an idea that make yourself obsolete before somebody else does? Is it that you're going to be the driver of change in the market? When do you actually start deciding this? And what is the compulsion here for Yahoo to actually start thinking about this?
Would not have a crisp thought right now of when, from a generic standpoint, that when should any company look at it. I definitely know that a company should not start, and in its first year, or
Absolutely.
That's just my point of view. That I don't think that a company should just start and then within a year, due to whatever reason, start looking at these type of strategies. But I guess I can't give an answer in time that a company should look at these type of things after the 5th or 6th or 9th year of its incorporation.
I agree. It's not an answer on time.
It's not.
But then
it's not an answer on time.
Yes, but then the question is, do you think
what drives it?
Yes. Do you think Yahoo should actually look at it right now?
My personal mastery on the case this time is a bit on the lower side, so I
not a
take
problem.
excuse from the class, very honestly. But I'd like some of my colleagues to give us that insight.
Okay, not a problem. I'll get back to you. No, not a problem. Rajiv, I'll get back to you somewhere down the line. Just think through like what's happening and how we could actually build up on this. Okay, so we have Suresh here. Suresh from Bangalore. Yes, Suresh, please go ahead.
I think you're right. As we discussed, it's more of a situation where Yahoo or any other company feels that
Suresh,
it's a situation where I cannot.
Just a second, Suresh. Could you just increase your mic volume?
Hello. Am I audible?
A little better.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a situation where Yahoo or any company starts sensing that it is difficult, the time is difficult to diversify, or time is difficult to kind of let go some of its businesses that's currently into. And there is an external pressure in the market due to extensive competition, where the competition is killing, and it's probably too late or too difficult to make an internal change in the organization. So probably an organization has reached such a stage where it's kind of dying out, and that's where a decision has to be taken that yes, I have to go for a partnership or a merger and an alliance, etc.
Okay.
So that's one thought. And second thing is, in case of Yahoo, probably this might be the right time, because some of the parameters that looking at the previous question that you asked, like it's more like a decision tree that it has to assess. Yahoo has to assess its current position in the market and probably predict what will be its position 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, and comparing that with the competition, and probably rate itself where it stands, and then devise an entry and an exit strategy. Should I enter into a new market or a new technology or a new solution, and probably do a SWOT in that, like, if I enter, what are the strengths, threats entering that market?
Okay.
And
Great. Now the next question. I like what you're saying. So what you're saying is assessing the current position for Yahoo, right? Assessing the current position of the industry, how the whole industry is placed, because that is going to clearly define what this company should actually do, because the industry is screwed up, or if industry is moving in a certain direction, so in the external environment is actually going to have certain sets of realities, then I think the decision is going to be much easier for us to take, because once we understand that. But now the question is, how do I assess the current position? Because when you actually say using something like, say, SWOT, I think it is going to be a very, very simplistic analysis. It does not really tell me what's happening. Because when you say SWOT here, this becomes internal. That is your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats is more external. But this does not really give me a lot of information. It just tells me, okay, there are some opportunities outside, there could be some threat because of technology. There are some strengths the organization has, some weaknesses the organization has. But this might not let me get the right answer. So what do you think I need to do here? How do I assess the position to get the right answer? What is the tool do you think that you will actually use here? And how do you assess it? What are the various things that you would like to really know about when you want to actually take a decision of this nature?
Is it again going back to the 4 C's that we spoke about in our earlier classes? And
no, not really.
Of those C's where it...
We'll have to move ahead on that.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll take some time to think.
Okay. I'll get back to you, Suresh, on this. Not a problem. Okay. Meena. Let's see what Meena has to say on this. So, Meena, my question remains here. Strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threat as a model is very limited in scope. Because when you talk about strengths and weaknesses, yes, you actually make a very generic assessment of the company. When you talk about opportunities and threats, very generic assessment of the external environment. But now the question is, if I really want to assess the present position, if I really want to understand the fundamental things that are happening within the industry, how do I do it? And what are the various things that I would actually look at?
See, we have to see, Yahoo has to assess the complete environment, the external environment and the complete ecosystem in which it is operating. By ecosystem, I mean the entire gamut. One is the industry as such, who are their immediate competitors that they are actually competing with, and who are their suppliers. Suppliers in the sense their alliance partners, and who are the people whom they provide, with whom they have tie-ups for information, like their ISP providers or the information content providers, the news agencies and what not. And the next is who are their customers, the actual web users, the advertisers and the e-commerce providers, and also their revenue model. And these are the most important are the who are the like the potential entrants, like who are just entering into the market. Like in this case study, surprisingly Google is not mentioned, but they are, I think they came across as a major threat to Yahoo, and see where they are currently now. They have been completely wiped out, Yahoo now. Google is a force to reckon with their search strategy and all. So
Meena, yes, but then
the next is the...
When this case was written, Yahoo was the dominant player, and Google was not there in the 1998 thing. So probably I think it's about 10 years back. So Google was very, very small, or it was not even in existence at that point in time.
Yeah.
But yes, you were saying something. Just continue.
Yeah, and also who are the substitutes? Who are any of those, the specialized sites, like from the news and media agencies and all. So looking at the entire ecosystem, and then they have to arrive at who can be their alliance partners and with whom they can do for a merger. And so this is how I think they should arrive at come to a decision. Whether it's the right time to go for an alliance or with a merger with any of the player too. And Microsoft is another MSN. That was another competitor which are emerging in this area.
Okay.
So I'm just telling you the approach. How to go about taking this kind of decision for Yahoo.
What you're saying here is that we need to actually do a proper industry analysis, which is going to talk about various things that we need to look at, and looking at the reading that was given to you. So you're saying there are 5 forces that we need to fundamentally understand. But now the question is, how do I make an assessment of the customer here? How do I make an assessment of the competitor here, and so on and so forth? So let's do this exercise in the session today. So I lead this exercise of really doing a 5 forces analysis. Sure. So if you really look at it, there are 5 fundamental forces that we really talk about. So what are those 5 forces? One of them is going to be rivalry.
The industry.
Yeah,
the primary competition.
Exactly. So it's about competition and rivalry. The next thing is going to be, say, bargaining power of suppliers. Then it is bargaining power of buyers. Of course, there is going to be something like substitutes and threat of new entrants. But now let's go through this one by one. And what do you have to say about rivalry here? Yes, Meena.
I guess from the case study, I think the major rivals are, I think, Excite and AOL America Online.
Okay. Excite.
Okay.
AOL. What
and
else?
AOL.
Anybody else?
Lycos.
What is the basis of competition? That's one question.
MS.
What are these guys competing on? How are they really trying they are trying to differentiate the products, or how are they really trying to differentiate their services? What is it that really trying to do? When I talk about the industry itself, there are 2 or 3 kind of things that are happening here. You call somebody as a portal, you call somebody as a votal and everything. So that is the information that is given to us. So, but what's the basis of competition? What are these guys doing here?
They are again in the same business of portal, providing the information, providing the kind of information to the web users, and also to the helping the advertisers and the marketeers to sell their wares. So I think this is where all these players are literally fighting for that.
So that means ad revenues.
Advertising.
So what you're saying is
ad revenue and
ad revenue is the most critical thing here.
Yep.
Okay. So ad revenues is the reason for their existence. If they do not get adequate ad revenues, they'll actually go down the drain.
Yes,
They'll probably, their business models will get messed up. They'll not have the revenues to sustain, and so on and so forth. Okay. So when you talk about rivalry, there are multiple sets of players who are there. But now I have to ask you a question. Am I able to differentiate the players, or are they just doing the same set of things? Or there is a certain level of strategy convergence that is happening?
Going through the case study, I agree that there is not much differentiation among the players. I mean, we have this AOL and Netscape are going into, I mean, there are some alliances and mergers which is happening between AOL and Netscape, Excite and @home, and they are probably drawing on their synergies. But other than, I mean, the services that they are providing to the actual customers who are the web users, I don't think there is much. They are all into all those portal areas like the communities and the social media, the emails, the different vertical sites. So, at least I'm not able to see any differentiation among the ways. I mean, if anybody has any different opinion, I would be more than willing to think. I mean,
okay. So there seems to be a huge level of strategy convergence. That is what you're saying here, right? Everybody is trying to do the same set of things. Okay, Meena, great. So I'll actually get back to you after a while. Let's see what Visu has to say from Chennai.
Okay. So as you mentioned, we need to look at the SIPOC thing, that supplier and customer, what are the internal and outside.
So let's take the next set of steps now. Let's see. So what she's saying is that there are some issues on rivalry. There is nothing like, there is no possibility of differentiating the product that is being made available. And everybody just doing the same set of things. But now the question is, what are if you really look at this issue, why are these guys not differentiating? And if they can't differentiate, how do you think they can be successful? What are the next steps they have to actually take? And what are those various things that they're really trying to do? Why is it that they're not able to differentiate? Why have they actually got into this situation? Why is the basis for competition advertising? What is it that the whole industry is being driven by?
Everybody having their core competencies, but if you look at except Yahoo, other three of them involved in e-business, that is .com industry they involved. And if you look at that exhibit 13, so most of them are Excite, Lycos, Infosys, they involved in the .com business.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's see. Let's go a step ahead. Who are the suppliers here? Tell me something about the suppliers. Let's get into a groove here. So we understand there is something happening in competition. Let's understand the suppliers here. Who are the suppliers? How are the suppliers behaving? Why do you think the suppliers are behaving the way they are behaving?
Okay, mostly the channels, the news channels, and the sports, and if you look at automotive business, and even the career, the education industry people, they are the suppliers, major suppliers.
So what you're saying is the content providers, right?
Yep.
Okay. So content providers are the major suppliers. How are they behaving? What are the content providers doing here? Are they giving the product to you for free of charge? Is it very easy to get content?
No.
Everybody can get the same content, or what?
No, based on the what to say, like if you take Amazon, so they are open for everybody, but some of the contents it's based on the privilege you have with that organization, so you can able to access those informations. So the prime customers, so they have differentiate the customers based on that they are providing the accesses.
Oh, no, okay, now that's okay.
content.
What you're saying is how customers can actually buy information, right? But now if I really see the suppliers of content to the person like, say, Yahoo as a website, who are the people who are supplying information to them? How are they really getting the information? Are they paying for it? Are they not paying for it? Is it possible to differentiate on the basis of content that they actually get? Or there seems to be a problem there as well?
Maybe when they get the information from the news channels, so maybe they can prioritize a couple of things which they are publishing in their website, Yahoo in their portal. Same way the sports news, otherwise the products, in case like how many times the clicks are happening, so based on that they may generate the revenue.
Okay. Okay. So let's see. So let's move ahead on this. I think you have made a few interesting points. So I'll get back to you, Vishu. Yes. So let's see what Amit has to share here. Yes, Amit.
Dr. Kapil. Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. We'll move ahead from here. Specifically, if we talk about Yahoo working strategy, how actually they used to work is once a paid customer or unpaid customer is accessing their website, if they want to purchase a product, then the Yahoo guys are exactly not charging from the customers. They are charging from the companies who are registered with them. So we can say like maybe Amazon or eBay or those kind of companies, or email services.
Okay, let's go one at a time. You know what are the suppliers here? I think the suppliers are the content providers, right? I want to understand who these suppliers are first before we actually go ahead. So who are the suppliers here?
I'm just guessing. It might be like Amazon or eBay, those kind of.
Content providers.
Or,
There is
might be
information given in the case which says that the content providers are the suppliers, right? You could have companies like Reuters,
Okay.
you could have companies like, say, the news channels,
Yeah.
so on and
Yeah.
so forth. So the
Yeah.
newspapers, the print
Yeah,
providers.
news agencies.
So they are the content providers. But now the question is, the next question that I had asked
routers.
is, I'd asked is that, do you think they're getting the information for free? Are they able to differentiate the product on the basis of information that is being given to them or given to the customers on the website? Or is it that everybody is just doing the same thing? In fact, like what we
Not
need
exactly,
what we need to understand here is, what is the bargaining power of suppliers? Who is it that is controlling the industry? When I actually do an industry analysis, what I need to fundamentally understand is, who's controlling the industry? Is it the supplier who's controlling the industry, who rules the roost here, or is it the buyer who's controlling the industry? Or is it that there is a huge threat of substitution and the industry is going to change dramatically in the next few days or in the next 6 months and you'll suddenly just get screwed up? Say, because there could be a massive substitution that could happen and the whole industry structure could just get altered, because the whole business model could actually change. Say, let me give you a very simple example here. So when you talk about the telecom industry, I think the biggest change that happened in the telecom industry was at the time when voice over IP happened. Yes, because the moment voice over IP happened, that means the prices of telecom services had to go down, because voice over IP was free for the general guy. Say for you and me, today I can actually use a thing like Skype, or I can use Yahoo Talk, Google Talk, and so many things. I could use things like Magic Jack and probably Vonage and so on and so forth. So that means suddenly everything just became so cheap. So the telecom service providers have faced a huge set of problems. They had to alter their business model. So, but now that is substitute here. So similarly, like there could be a threat from a new entrant that who could actually come in. But how do I actually make an assessment here? Let's see one thing. Let me just show you a small presentation here, and then I'll actually give you some time for food for thought to really think through this situation. In fact, I'll just show you a small presentation right now. We will go through this presentation and let's see how we could actually use this analysis to really think through things. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that there is a very powerful tool that we could actually use to really make an assessment of how the industry is actually moving, how the industry changes. In fact, and what are the factors which are going to have an impact on the industry, and why players behave the way they behave, why the strategy actually gets formulated the way it does in things. So this is what we are really going to look at. So if you really look at Porter's 5 forces, it's a model of competition trying to understand what is the basis for competition for us. What is actually happening? So the first thing that I need to look at is, say, threat of new entrants. And when I actually talk about threat of new entrants here, what I really look at is something like, what are the barriers for entry? In fact, as a player, what do you think you will do if you have a threat of new entrants? As a player, you have to strategically erect barriers to entry. You have to make sure that there are no new players who can actually come into the industry. How would you actually do that? Say, if you really talk about steel today, the threat of entrance into steel would be very, very low for multiple reasons. One of them is going to be because the kind of capital that you require to actually get into that business. The economies of scale that you require is huge. If you want to create a scale that, say, somebody like Ellen Mitchell has, you would require billions of dollars. And this is an industry where Mitchell or the Mitchell industry or the Mitchell group just controls about 10% of the steel industry, and that's the situation here. So if you really look at the idea here, that is like, how do I actually create these barriers? Can I actually create some kind of product differentiation? Can I do something like, can I create a patent? If I have a patent, then that means people will not be able to copy it. Say something like in the pharmaceutical industry. In the pharmaceutical industry, it becomes very difficult for you to really copy it because there are different sets of patenting regimes across the world. But typically, if you actually have a product patent, then that means you will not be able to come out with that drug. So you're going to control that product patent for a number of years. Typically, that happens to be about 8 years after the drug has got into the market. So anything between 6 to 8 years, depending on how fast you're able to get your drug into the market. So whether I can actually differentiate my product, if I can create, if I'm able to control the differentiation by patenting and so on and so forth, probably barriers to entry could be the huge capital requirement, because that's the same thing to economies of scale. And what about switching costs? Is it easy for a customer to change from one supplier to the other supplier. Because if you've actually got deeply embedded with somebody like one player, it becomes very difficult for you to actually move ahead. Say something like in the telecom industry, how many of us would be willing to actually change our telephone numbers? Since we are not ready to change our telephone numbers, we will actually stay with the same service provider. And now if you really look at it, there is something very interesting happening in the industry, in the telecom industry, and that is called number portability. And why do you think everybody is shouting at the top of their voice that we should not have number portability? And especially one of the players who's shouting at the top of their voice and they're actually trying to say that, okay, we are not ready for number portability, we should not do it, and so on and so forth, is BSNL. Why do you think BSNL is actually doing this? The reason is very simple. Because the moment number portability happens, it means that my switching costs will go down dramatically. The switching cost that I actually have is embedded in the telephone number that I actually have. Because my contacts have it, it becomes very difficult for me to tell them that I changed my number and so on and so forth. So there is an artificial barrier here. The moment that number portability happens, I could actually take my telephone number to any player in the, or any service provider, and I could use that number. And suddenly that switching cost just vanishes. And when you talk about, say something like a barrier to entry, it could be, say, something like a distribution channel. Very simply put, you could actually say that, okay, if somebody like a player like an FMCG player has to enter this country, it's not going to be easy to enter because the distribution channel that you have to create is humongous. In India is a huge gargantuan company, so you have to actually invest in that kind of things. Probably something like government policy. The government could suddenly change policy one day. It could say that, okay, we would not let X kind of players to come into the market. And if that happens, then there is, you can't really enter. But there is one thing that is actually given in the slide here, and that is something called as expected retaliation. And when I actually talk about this expected retaliation, what does it mean? If there is a big guy and if he notices that there is a small guy coming into the market, he could actually come back to you with a vengeance. And he could actually screw you up. You could actually get into price wars. You could actually become a player which could be acquired and so on and so forth. So there are going to be various sets of things that happen here. So one is the threat of new entrants. The next thing that we really need to look at is bargaining power of suppliers. I need to fundamentally understand here, who are my suppliers? Suppliers could mean a lot of people here. Suppliers could be suppliers of, say, my raw materials to supplier of talent and so on and so forth. In fact, this is where we can actually look at one major thing. If you really look at it, what is the labor force all about? Labor is actually a supplier because they are actually supplier of a certain set of capability within the enterprise. So that is one thing that actually happens here. But now the question is, bargaining power of suppliers, and how can a supplier exert power within the industry? How he could actually create a mess for you? It should be like, say, powerful suppliers can squeeze industry profitability if firms are unable to recover cost increases. Say, if you really look at, say, bargaining power of suppliers here, there could be a lot of skew that happens. Say, if I have a patented product, and if you can't really create, you can't run your business without me, I could actually arm twist you into giving me lots of your revenues. If you remember, I think we did discuss last time about something like CDMA. Say Qualcomm, if anybody is using CDMA technology on its telecom network, they have to give something to Qualcomm. So that's the power here that can actually rise. But now, a lot of times within the Indian context, you would have actually seen that there are, at least in the car industry or the automobile industry, Rajiv is there, so we can actually go to Rajiv after this example. In terms of, say, when you talk about a component supplier, do you think they can actually arm twist a player like Maruti or not? Who has a bargaining power which is higher here? So who controls the rules? Say if somebody like Rajiv can actually arm twist a person like Maruti, then that means that yes, so Maruti is actually going to be in a weakened position. But then that probably is not going to be true somehow in this case. Let me just see what Rajiv has to say about this.
I wish, any supplier or anybody could arm twist customers and make huge returns. To be honest, despite of the fact that every component that goes into an automotive company, and therefore the automotive component supplier is a critical supplier, I think no supplier has a bargaining power to twist its customer. One, in time, the customer can always find an alternate supplier. There are some suppliers who have patented, like Bosch, and that's one name that comes to my mind, and some others. But I guess none of them is working in a monopolistic environment. So my straight answer is no. As an auto component supplier, we personally cannot arm twist any of our customers. Having said that, I'll also say that we need to push our case with our customers. But because we means the Indian supply base is essentially not ahead in its patent and technology curve. I think, some of the players that we hear about in terms of, the German suppliers, the Japanese suppliers, they're a bit more ahead. So they probably arm twist, at least in the initial stages, when they have certain key technologies that get exploited. This happened with the so-called diesel engine revolution and stuff like that. So, but clearly, no, we don't have, in automotive industry, there are very few customers. There is a large number of suppliers. For each commodity, there is already a multiple set of suppliers. Suppliers, tend to make investments. So the five forces model in the automotive industry is not skewed towards suppliers. Otherwise, we wouldn't be hearing of supplier bankruptcies and suppliers having wafer thin margins and stuff like that. So that's my view.
Yeah, this is a perfect case of where what you see is like when suppliers are very weak. Because say somebody like Maruti, which is buying huge numbers, so they are the reason for your existence, the reason for your profitability, and so on and so forth. So they could always arm twist you. But then let me ask you something very interesting here. When you talk about labor as a supplier, why do you think a CEO gets such a high salary than somebody else? And especially in the knowledge domain.
Well, two questions you asked. One is, why does CEO get such a high salary? Well, he's simply that one entity which is providing all forms of leadership and talent, and to keep that or to maintain that. I'm just talking of a professional CEO right now, so I'm not linking it up with ownership or risk-taking ability that he displays. So a professional CEO, since he assumes the domain of leadership, and it's in him that the buck stops, and he drives the performance metrics necessary for investors or etc. So it's a premium it's a premium talent, and therefore you want to, every company, every shareholder, every board wants to keep the best, and therefore there is a huge, I would say the premium comes around because of talent shortage and huge expectations or huge contribution. That's on one side. You made a very good point about, or you made an interesting mention of labor. Labor is a key supplier to any company that is labor dependent in terms of manufacturing or contracting or whatever it is. And labor, we have experiences in Gurgaon. Labor does tend to off and on exhibit its bargaining power. I'm not able to think completely on the spot as to, should I say that the bargaining power is hugely in their favor? I mean, they are a large supplier of a certain aspect. We can't work without labor in manufacturing or certain other these similar type of industries. So labor has a certain bargaining power. But at the spur of the moment, these are my two points.
Let's move ahead
in
on
our
this.
Industry.
Yeah, so
it's interesting to apply. That in the case of Yahoo, where the suppliers are the so-called content provider, and essentially the portals are nothing but a bridge. In those terms, when the search engine like Google was, essentially these portals were the mini search engines. That's where you go to decide where you want to go next. And I think they were in a powerful position. if I was to do a multiple choice, I would say if Yahoo had a very high customer base, an online click base, the bargaining power of the suppliers would have not been that much because they would have wanted to be made available through the channel of Yahoo to the online customer.
Okay. Now, Rajiv,
and Yahoo was paying them some money for it.
Just hold on for a second. Hold on for a bit on this Yahoo thing.
Yeah.
We'll get back to Yahoo. But then coming to that labor thing that you were saying, I think CEOs get higher money because it might not necessarily be true, but there is one way of looking at it from a five forces perspective. Say when you talk about a content provider, or say when you talk about a supplier can actually get into your industry. Supplier can be one of your biggest threats to actually start what you're doing, or the supplier for an industry you are into. Say somebody like, say if you're a supplier for certain component for manufacturing, say a drug, you could actually become a drug manufacturer yourself. So similarly, if you really look at somebody like talent and somebody who's hugely talented, and especially in a IT industry or especially in the technology industry, you could actually be the biggest threat to the next guy there because you could start your own company itself. Say somebody, if you are one person who files a patent for some acoustic technology, and you could just create some company around it. A greatest example in this case is Bose. So like Bose probably started with supplier of some technology to one player, and then suddenly created something of its own, which ended up becoming one of the smartest acoustic companies in the world. So talent is always paid because they could actually be a big threat somewhere. So that is one way of looking at it. But let's move ahead and see what are the various other components that we could actually look at. So if you really look at it, so suppliers are likely to be powerful in certain sets of situations. One is the supplier industry is dominated by a few firms, like you control that industry. Supplier products have very few substitutes. You can't really find an alternate here. Buyer is not an important customer to a supplier because say if you're a small buyer and things, like I could just not care about you. Supplier's products are differentiated and so on and so forth. So these are various things which could actually make the supplier powerful. But at least you have to really make this assessment from each industry's point of view, from each player's point of view. So if you really look at the next one, so that means we have something called as the bargaining power of buyers. These are the people who are actually going to use your product. Say somebody like, in this case, in this classroom, you're the buyers and that is why you're here. So you have a certain level of bargaining power here. But now the question is, what increases your bargaining power? Buyers are concentrated or purchase account for a significant fraction of suppliers' costs or sales. Products are undifferentiated and so on and so forth. So if you really look at it, if there is a high level of bargaining power for the buyer, he could do a lot of things to you. In fact, if you really look at this relationship between, say, Maruti versus the other guys, so in this case, if you actually do something like a five forces for the ancillary industry, then Maruti is your buyer. But that Maruti has a huge bargaining power because he's a large customer. He'll be the reason for most of your revenues. You will not have other players you can actually go to. In fact, if you really look at Maruti for that example, or in fact, I'll not say Maruti itself, across the board, a lot of car companies or automobile companies, they'll always say that if you want to actually have something like sell cars or you want to create a showroom, then you cannot actually create cars from other manufacturers. Why do you think they have to do that? Because that's a great case of bargaining power of the supplier here, right? So even though you could actually be a buyer, say when you're actually selling cars, the guy like Apra or guy like Pasco or whatever in Gurgaon or the dealers there, they are actually your buyers, but the supplier can actually arm twist. In fact, say somebody like Nestle, what do you think Nestle does when you're actually wanting to sell your product into the open market? Say Nestle would arm twist its dealer by saying that, okay, if you want to actually get, like they actually make chocolates. They make the most horrible chocolates in the world. The most horrible one of that Nestle makes is called Bar One. Absolutely non-edible. It's like shit. So if you really look at it, I have a very interesting. I've seen a movie which says that you can live on it, but it tastes like shit. So that's Bar One for you. But now, what Nestle says is that if you want to actually buy Nescafe coffee, you have to actually buy the stupid chocolate called Bar One. If this is the kind of thing that actually happens. So there is a huge level of anti-competitive activity that could actually be driven through this. But now nobody's talking about it. Nobody really wants to take stances on this, so this continues to happen. But next one is, say, the threat of substitute products. I actually said there in the beginning that, okay, substitutes could be newer sets of technologies that could actually happen. But then, say, if you really talk about substitutes like washing machines in your house, there is a huge threat that actually emerged for your housemates through this technology. Rivalry among existing firms, that would mean like how are they really competing against each other, what are the bases for competition, making new product introductions or staging advertising battles, and how are they really doing? What is it, a fierce price competition? Because if you really look at it, if there is a certain kind of behavior within the industry, if there is a certain level of strategy convergence, it happens because the other four factors have a certain kind of a build-up. In case of Yahoo also, you would find that there is a certain kind of build-up. That is why there is a huge level of strategy convergence here. Everybody just doing the same set of things. Why is that actually happening? Why is it that everybody just does the same thing? Because the whole five forces is structured in such a way. It is very difficult for you to really do something else. And if you want to do something else, you have to really start thinking beyond. So that we'll come back to that as we actually move ahead. So the next one, say, if you really look at is rivalry amongst existing competition or cutthroat competition is likely to occur when these conditions are fulfilled. So we're very quickly moving ahead with these slides. One thing that we need to understand is the effects of entry barriers and exit barriers on industry profits. Because if you really see, if it is easy to enter an industry or if it is easy to exit the industry or so on and so forth, that is actually going to create different sets of dimensions of how profitability actually happens. There are going to be industries which are wherein it's very easy to enter, but very difficult to actually exit. Because it could be because of, say, asset specificity, one issue that we really talked about in the airline industry, to other sets of things that could actually happen. So if you really look at this next thing, when you talk about, say, exit barriers are going to be low and entry barriers are going to be low, that means you're actually going to be talking about low stable returns. You're not really going to be making lots of money, but it's just going to be very consistent level of money that you could actually make. When you talk about exit barriers going to be low, but entry barriers are high, it's going to be high stable returns because very difficult for people to enter. There could be some kind of economies of scale effects that could actually happen. When you talk about exit barriers being high, entry barriers being low, it's a very, very risky business to get into, not very smart. But then if you really look at the next thing, this one, high exit barriers, high entry barriers, again something which is very, very risky. But now the question is, this is where if you're going to be just one of the few players who gets in here, then it becomes a very good position to actually get into. So if you really look at it, what we are really looking at is something like a competitors analysis here. What is it that the companies are doing here? Why they are actually doing a certain set of things that they are doing? So now this is where I'll actually leave you for a small break for about 15-20 minutes. Don't take your coffee today. Go through this case on Yahoo. Think through this case. I think I'll give you about 25 minutes. 25 minutes to think through this case. I would want some of you to present your 5 forces for Yahoo now and see what is the answer that we are able to get out of this. Because if we are able to do this 5 forces well, I think the next 2 sessions are about understanding this 5 forces and understanding how we could actually do an industry analysis well. If we get a hang of it, I think we'll find huge levels of answers within our industries and so on and so forth. And incidentally, before we break for tea, this is where I would rather say I've not really responded to you folks on your projects, but now is the time when we'll start working on your projects, because this is the tool that I wanted you to know before we moved into your projects. So now we know the tools, so let's start talking about your projects this week onwards. So let's have a small quick break for about 25 minutes. You'll have to actually do the 5 forces for Yahoo, and I'll ask some of you to actually make a presentation. I think 2-3 names that come to my mind very, very quickly are going to be Anupama from Gurgaon, who could just do this small presentation for about 10 minutes on Yahoo, then probably Murali Sundar from Chennai. So that is what we'll do right now. Thank you. Okay. Hi. Welcome back from the break and the exercise time. So we'll start with some set of analysis, and I said we are actually going to start with a few people around. So let's see what Murli has to say about this, and maybe we're going to give him about close to 10 minutes to really talk about Yahoo and the 5 forces and the analysis that he does, and then we'll go to Anupama. Yes. So Murli.
10 minutes, I think it's still.
Murli, I'm not able to hear you.
Let's try. Hello.
Murli, I can't hear you. You have to plug in your mic properly, probably, or switch it on or something.
Am I audible now?
A little bit, yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, okay. See, I tried, kind of putting this in place, these 5 forces. So let me first articulate the suppliers. So we spoke a lot in the previous session about content providers, who would be one of the suppliers. Then you have labor, which you brought about, but I think most of us did not mention about it. And it also talks about the labor costs being very high in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
So obviously you've got to pay more for these kind of people. So they will be one of the key members of the supplier group. Then the browsers, which is basically on Netscape and Internet Explorer, who will be the other 2 big suppliers who could influence, the usage of this medium, and so they could have a increased bargaining power in terms of who could tie up with which web the portal. Then the hardware suppliers, because they also talk about if the speed is high and the contents that can be provided can be of a higher quality and stuff like that. So they would be another critical supplier group of this entire business. So in all, I had listed about the content providers, labors, the browsers, and the hardware suppliers as the key supplier group which could influence this business positively or negatively.
Yes.
Then moving on to the buyer group, I listed only 2 of them. I'm not sure if, how many more clusters we can look at. One is the advertisers, because the advertisers put in their money basis what content you provide, what reach you get, and those kind of things. So basically the advertisers will be one of the buyer group. Then the consumers themselves. Now the consumer gets hooked on to a web based on what it's produced, what gets processed, or what is made available to them in terms of interaction or interactive stuff, or information and things like that. So these are the 2 groups which I had listed among the buyers. Moving on to the substitutes. See, this case also says Yahoo started its business defining themselves as a media player and not really a information or a search engine kind of a background, which we are currently going through. So for them, the media, individual media by itself could be a big substitute. See, when I want to watch, a Disney channel, then I would rather like to watch a Disney channel rather than get into Yahoo and then watch a Disney. So they will be one key substitute, because what is also happening is these media, guys are also putting on their web, and they're also asking these website companies to have a link to them. So they could also, kind of evolve into their own specialized web portals which provide the content which they specialize on. Then the other search engines where, you just search, you don't have to look for content within that website, but you can just log on to it and go to wherever you want to go, because it takes you faster and easier. So probably that's one of the substitute which they lost out when Google entered probably in that space. Then the independent portals which they spoke about, and the vertical sites where a lot of e-com business and things like that were happening. So these are probably the substitutes which were available for the business at that point of time. In terms of threat of new entrants, I think a whole host of these suppliers, all these content providers, the labors could move out and start some new businesses. The browsers themselves, like MSN, they bought a Hotmail, and then they started becoming a competition in terms of web.
and things like that. The hardware suppliers, they themselves can also, kind of reinvent themselves into a web portal and things like that. So there's a huge threat of new entrant as well. Rivalries, I think the crux of this entire thing is since everybody started providing content and things like that, there's not much differentiation, so the differentiations have blurred. And at a point of time, you start looking at everybody cross-using every other channel and probably providing similar content. So what's happening probably in this, in terms of the portal model, in terms of entry and exit barriers, you're looking at where a less entry barrier, but a very high exit barrier at that point of time. And I think probably Yahoo got itself stuck into low margins with risky returns because the margins are thinning down. And with this business where you can create with the technology development the web at a faster pace, your contents will provide the key. And if contents are going to be bargained by everybody else, then it's going to be quite risky to operate. And the option that I see for Yahoo to probably do is, start relooking at their reason d'etre for existence. Like for instance, I'm a media company. I think they probably will have to revisit whether they'll have to define themselves as a media company or call themselves as an information provider or a search engine to get information, whatever you wanted. If they have to move into it, I think I would probably look at the space where it's a low income, stable returns kind of a movement, which is a low entry and low exit barrier, because you're not going to invest on creating content and things like that. You would probably do a lot of deals with the content providers. Basically, you lead them to their websites and things like that, and you just stay as a service provider. With minimalistic community, society kind of a thing, so that there is an interaction happening. I think probably that's where Google entered over a period of time. And this is my assessment.
Great. Great, Murali. I'll actually get back to you on this because I have a lot of questions from you. But I'll actually ask those questions once I've actually got opinions from Anupama. So, Anupama, let's see what Anupama has to say about the analysis here.
Yeah, in fact, I have similar opinions as what Murali has also mentioned. The suppliers, the bargaining powers of suppliers is what is the first point that I'm talking about. There were basically 2 or 3 kind of supplier. One is the content provider for sure, that we've been talking about. Then the technology partners and the hardware. I mean, all these people were the supplier part of it. However, when I look at the content provider, again, what is mentioned in the case is, the kind of, if they were with a big brand, let's say the content provider had a bigger brand, then in that case, they would pay to them. That means they would incur cost from them. But if they were small ones, then in that case, it would be like they would provide information and they would be there on the portal, and that becomes their advertising kind of a thing. So this is what has been mentioned. So bargaining power of supplier would again depend how big the player is, how big that supplier is. That is how it has been put in the case. Then as far as the bargaining power of buyers, again, yes, the people who were advertising or the ones who wanted their portals, their websites onto it, where you could buy items, those companies plus the consumers, they were the buyers over here. And yes, they had a higher bargaining power. Then the rivalry among existing competition, that is, they've talked about AOL and MSN. AOL again had distinguished, although there were lots of, that they would not prove themselves, but it does talk about that AOL had created its own uniqueness. So AOL was one of them, then MSN was another one of them. Then the threats of new entrant, again, it's like low entry and high exit is what it talks about. And the threat of substitute products, there are lots of portals which have similar kind of, similar things happening in all the portals. So they were more or less competing with each other. In fact, if you look at even the content providers, they are same in all the 4 or 5 competition that we have as per the exhibit. That is what I have to say over here.
Okay, couple of things here. So when I really talk about say suppliers, yes, there are the same set of content providers and everything, so there is hardly any differentiation. The content is not really creating or giving you something huge here. In fact, there are times when content providers are giving you information for free, and in case if you want to get specialized information, only then you are
Correct.
paying for it. So that is one thing that is very, very clear. But now looking at...
Or you are a big brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Say if you're getting some information from Reuters, you're getting something from BBC or whatever, then you might actually pay something.
Correct.
But otherwise it was absolutely free. In fact, right now in the last 10 years, I think things have dramatically changed on content, because what happened is like content is the king was the idea that actually came about, and people started paying for it. In fact, there is this person who actually blogs from Iraq, and he has actually got his website or his blog on Yahoo, and he's paid close to $1 million every month for putting his blog on Yahoo. So like now content has started emerging as a very, very powerful thing, because content is something which feels, a lot of people feel that is going to create stickiness. But now the next question is, so if you really talk about the buyers here, so you're saying there are 2-3 categories of buyers here. But now I need to understand one thing. The challenge starts from the buyers here. In fact, if you really look at the buyers here, there are 2 categories here. One of them is a paid paying person, that is the advertiser. The second one is a person like you and me. Both of them are required to actually be successful, because people are going to advertise on your site only if you actually have people like you and me coming on the website, because you need to actually have those eyeballs and everything coming onto the website. But now the question is, what is actually happening at the buyer front, and why is it actually happening? And if I really have to manage this challenge, what do you think I need to do? Do you think this is a big challenge enough so that Yahoo should actually move ahead and say, okay, I need to go for a merger and acquisition? Do you think it makes sense for Yahoo to say, I'm going to acquire a browser and then go into, or that is what is going to make me get some extra customers? Do you think the Yahoo is going to make, or it makes sense for Yahoo to actually acquire a company because he gets some kind of a captive audience coming onto his website? Do you think this is an important issue that we should look at from a buyer's perspective?
From a buyer's perspective, yes, the bargaining power of buyers is very high.
Why do you think it is very high? Why do you think it is very high? Well, that is my question here. Why do you think it is very high?
It's more like a monopoly, because I mean, when you look at these companies which are advertising on the portal, it's more like a monopoly for them now. They are the sole ones.
Okay, now I'll not say it's a monopoly here. I'll say it because they have choice here. We are not very sure about the medium itself, because at the time when this case was written, we were not even sure whether internet as a medium actually functions for advertising or not. So you were competing against 2 or 3 different sets of things. You were competing against, say, television. You were competing against print media, and then there was something like web that actually happened. So yes, so they had many choices, and of course you could, at least there was something that was emerging at that point in time, and that was the analytics part of web business.
The technology was,
yes, the analytics
technology, the broadband, the bandwidth was also increasing. That is what they've talked about the case.
Yes, beyond that, I think it was analytics. You were able to see what the customer was doing, what is the click through, whether he actually goes on to go to the next website or not, whether it is translating into some sales or not at the immediate moment, and so on and so forth. So you were able to see these things happen. But even then, there are issues here. What do you think the buyer is doing? Like, why do you think the buyer is getting so much of bargaining power here? One is, yes, he gives you the money. What about people like you and me?
Because there are so many other parallel portals also.
Okay, so what happens because of that?
I mean, apart from Yahoo, there were other ones also where the buyers could go and.
So what does this mean? If I can move from one portal to the other portal, why was I actually able to do it so quickly? What is this phenomena called?
Can't say it.
Okay, there is something called.
Basically,
there is very low switching cost for me as a customer.
Switching cost, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can move from
low switching cost. Yes. It's a very one portal to another. Yeah.
Yes, I can just move out. In fact, if you really look at the average time that a person could spend on a website, would be as low as 15 seconds. If I go to MSN today, I could just say, okay, I'm going to look at something else if I don't find something which is appropriate there. So switching costs are very low. So now if you know, like the bargaining power of people like me is very, very high because my switching costs are low. I need to do something as an industry and something as a company to make amends here. And what do you think I should do? So if you really look at this case completely, now there is something like, say, the bargaining power of suppliers, it's not something which is threatening, but the bargaining power of buyers is bloody extremely high. And it becomes very threatening for my business. My reason for existence of business could actually get threatened because of this. So what do you think I should actually do as a company? So now this actually takes us to a very important question that we started the session with, and that was that whether Yahoo should actually look at acquisition or a merger or whatever. This is where the question is actually embedded in. Because my whole question of merger, acquisition, etc., is actually dependent on whether I can actually increase the switching cost for my customer. And how do you think I can actually increase the switching costs? So that is one question that I have for you. How do you think I can increase these switching costs?
Capturing them.
Okay, now how do you capture
Acquiring
them?
them.
No, okay.
Capturing,
How?
acquiring them, basically.
Tell me, like, and there are sets of things that you can actually do. You've actually gone through this experience. You've seen it all happening in your life. How do you think websites make you stick to them?
Basically, be very innovative.
What are those innovations? Give me the
Website
answer.
has to be very innovative, very informative. Very
Innovative
live.
or informative? Now, these are two different things.
Informative, okay? Yeah.
Okay.
Innovative also and informative also,
Okay.
because if it doesn't give me the information, it will not work.
Okay, so
So
great.
innovative, yes, if it comes up with new things from time to time. And informative, yes, because that is where I would switch over from television to getting onto the net.
Okay.
Or getting onto the portal.
I like
right?
this.
If I start getting instant information.
So what you're saying is, information, yes, so information becomes important. So that was very clear because content is the king, that is clear. But what are those innovative things that I can do? I need your answer here. If you have to take a decision here, what are those innovative things that you will do? Now you're the big boss here, you're Jerry Wang. Now you have to actually make amends here because the customer you're actually catering to is a messy guy because he's not going to stick to you more than 30 seconds. And I need to find a way so that this guy is able to stick to me for more than 30 seconds. And what do you think I will actually do here? So the challenge in web business is about how do I actually get a person to spend more time with us? So how do I do that?
Give him discounts, give him some kind of,
Madam, in fact, very interestingly, if you really look at the internet, what all discounts can you give? It was bloody free of charge from day one. In fact, the internet is the biggest antithesis of capitalism anyways. There was a guy, he's an Indian, who screwed up the internet. He screwed up the complete economics of the internet, called Sabir Bhatia. He gave you Hotmail for free and everybody just got blooded, and so it was something like, say, giving blood to a lion. And that is what the customer was here. He absolutely got used to getting everything for free. You are not willing to pay for anything, right? So if I actually charge, or I'm not charging anyway, so there are no more discounts possible. So what do you think I should do now? You have an answer. You have an answer. You have seen it all. How do you think you can increase the engagement of the customer on the website?
See, what you talking about the Sabir Bhatia case, yes, that Hotmail did, since it was free of cost, it did have lots of users, lots of logins onto it. So, that is what I was referring to was discounts, means you give in some things which are free and then you start charging them over a period.
Okay, tell me these services then, what you could actually bring to the fore so that a person sticks around with you. I'm not going to move away from you till the time you answer, Anupama. So I'm stuck here. You have to answer this. You are the CEO of an organization. You have to find ways of engaging the customer now. And how do you think you will do it? I think Rajiv must be pestering you right now in the center. You're looking at him. I know that.
Okay.
Yeah. No answers? Okay,
Not really.
let me
I
go
think so.
to...
Yeah, you need to help me now here.
No, I'll go to the next person. I need the answer from somebody in the session here. Okay, we have Rajiv, no sorry, Purna here. Yes, Purna.
Associative they have done some associative programs with Compact HP to enter into direct market. Like that, they can offer some of the programs according to the market situation.
Now, what kind of programs? That's the question here.
For example, Google have started a browser, Google Chrome. With that, they can browse Google sites more faster.
Oh, okay. So you're actually okay. Now I'll help you here. See, if you really look at it, you know that this case is there's something very interesting here. How many? I should ask this question to all of you. How many of us would probably know how to change our home page on a browser? Indians know it, but 90% of the Americans, would not know it. How to even change the home page on your browser? So suddenly everybody wanted to be in browser business, because if you own the browser, you could actually set the home page, and then these Americans will not even know how to change it. So when you really look at AOL went into browsers for the single reason itself, because AOL was a internet service provider. So he actually went into browsers, and they said, okay, my browser is going to be used by everybody and anybody, and nobody will be able to change it. So that is one way of really increasing the switching costs for me.
That they are exposed to that environment.
Yeah, so I've actually made something like a switching cost here for the customer. What else do you think I can do to increase the switching cost? How can I actually increase the engagement with the customer?
Maybe the branding of the...
Okay, how would you brand it? What kind of branding?
Like Yahoo have created their image and advertised that and something like that.
Okay, I'll that's interesting, Purna. Give me 5 minutes. I'll get back to you again on this. In fact, let me see. Okay, now we have Rajiv. So, yes, you have to say something.
Yeah, here's the answers.
You have read the case now?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, it's actually to answer your question of what they could do. The answer is a little bit easy because of two reasons. One is because what we've seen, MSN acquiring Hotmail and the success of eBay. But I think if we go back to 2000 and pick up Exhibit 14. Okay, and at the background we ask ourselves, so if the objective for Yahoo or Yahoo CEO was to figure out how do I make this customer stick with me more, then I must ask myself the question, what does the customer, I locked in the browser partnership. So if I can do that, then he'll always go to Yahoo. That's great strategic move. But once he goes there, what does he really do? How much time is he spending on looking at information? Or is he using it for chat rooms? Or is he using it for email? I mean, it's easy for us to say this right now.
Yes.
In 2000, whatever data, we assume that the data on Exhibit 14 was available in 2000. And if we go back to that data, we see that in the first chart, in the last chart, we see, how much time is spent per month per user in any of the site. And we see eBay coming right on the top. Almost 2.5 times more time than a person spends on Yahoo, a person is spending on eBay. So, as a CEO, I would have said, well, here is a user who comes in, he uses my page or MSN's page or whosoever page for 52 or 37 minutes, whatever it is said in a month, but he spends 3 times that time on eBay. So, that could have been one target in my mind. And the other one is, the close second is Hotmail. So again, I'm saying this because of, we've seen MSN acquire Hotmail. That could have been a move that Yahoo could have done. And
okay, let me make it easier
with the
for you.
basics.
Okay, something on this itself. Let's build it up. What do you do on the internet right now? How do you use your services of the internet? What all do you do?
If the answer is to be given now in 2009, it's email.
Okay.
Facebook.
Okay.
Facebook. And Google.
Okay.
Because you search and then you see the content.
Fair.
Maybe then download a bit and then off.
Okay. So when you talk about it, when I want to actually increase the engagement of the customer, why do you think? The answer is, question is very simple. Why do you think Google, which was great in search, which was great in AdWords, wanted to get into Gmail?
To, again, the same thing, to keep the customer, to keep the customer more with it.
Okay, so to spend more, so that he spends more time with you. And the moment he spends more time with you, he would actually click on one of the ads that is actually there, and that is where you will actually get your monetization, right?
Correct, absolutely right.
So
absolutely.
that's
Just let your customer be,
be with you for a while. And so if you really look at it, if Yahoo had to do something, it had to find a way so that he could actually increase the amount of time that a person spends on his website. So if you really look at it, Yahoo did something very smart at that point in time. They did something like GeoCities. That is, like, the people were able to make their home pages. It was not the blogs that you are actually talking about today, but it was something like home pages that were happening. Little less than blogs, but then yes, they were happening. They got into email. They got into messenger services. All these things were actually increasing the level of engagement that you were actually having. And the moment you actually look at it, say, it's something like, I gave you an example of number portability when we were actually discussing this whole example of exit barriers. In fact, email is one of the biggest exit barriers for you. Because once you get used to a certain email, you would not want to change your email service provider. And that is what the level of engagement is actually doing for you. So you're suddenly increasing that level of engagement, you're increasing the exit barrier. Now if you know how to increase this exit barrier, so you know a few answers. But now the next question is, so one thing is you need to increase the level of engagement. But I have another question. I'll actually ask it from Murali here. So Rajiv, I'll leave you here. But then Murali. Yes. So we found some answers here, right? So we have to actually create more engagement with the customer. But now we have one more question to answer before I can say I can go for a merger or an acquisition or whatever. What will define whether I should go for a merger or an acquisition? If I want to create, I said, like, when do you actually acquire? What do you want to do when you acquire? You want to increase the entry barriers into the industry, right? Because people are not able to copy you. Do you think it is easy to enter this easy to enter this business? Because there was something called this threat of new entrants. Is it easy to enter this business?
Okay. Okay, I'll just put this in place because what ideally I would have done if I were to handle this business, I would have actually looked the traffic. I would have segmented my the group of people that who visit my web, and I've segmented them based on high traffic, medium and low traffic. Then I would have seen within each one of the segments, I would have seen the subjects that they kind of go and kind of spend more time on. Then if I could have a means to find out how my competitors are performing, what is the content that is getting searched more through my competitor web portals, so then I will know where I lack or what is that I need to do to complement my business. Then I'll see internally whether I can develop that myself so that I'm able to hold on to these people or provide new content wherein people could enter through me. Apart from all the web page, the pages and stuff like that which we had discussed earlier. Then if it is not possible, then one looks into the market and see who is good on this and who is worth betting in terms of acquiring in terms of in the market. Now, your independent players and vertical portals which are anyway existing, which specialize in certain things. So if they were to be the answer, then we end up acquiring them. So this is how I would have looked at in this case.
Okay, that's perfect. We will use this. But then the next question I have from you, one more small question. How easy is it to? Okay, I'll put it in a different way. When I actually talk about threat of new entrants, is it low? Is it high? Is it easy to enter this business or not easy to enter this business? Because that is going to fundamentally define whether I should actually acquire a company or go for a strategic alliance and so on and so forth. Because if I actually acquire,
at this point of
because if I acquire, I want to create an exit barrier.
Correct. See, at this point of time, the case when it is getting discussed, now, unless, you have a great differentiator from the existing service providers, it's going to be tough entering this category because you're not going to enter, do same thing what everybody is doing and, compete for the same pie. That's not going to work. So it's going to be tough entering this.
So you've changed your stance from the earlier stance that you've taken, wherein you had said that entry into this is going to be easy.
Correct. See, at that point of time when we looked at it, it was, okay, now once everything is blurred, it doesn't look any longer if you don't have a differentiator. Like Google entered with a strong differentiator probably. Now, if anybody else had to enter, but at that point of time, all the players, if you have to do the exhibit 13, I think everybody seems to be doing the same thing, maybe slightly better, faster, at a cheaper rate or a higher rate and things like that. So there was no clear differentiator until probably your MSN Hotmail came in and then Google came in with their own set of services. So that's where I came in. At that point of time, yes, it was. But after overcrowding, I think it's blurred. It's not so easy to enter without a great differentiator.
Okay. And one more thing, if you really look at it, when I actually talk about threat of new entrants, the biggest thing is how easy is it to enter. One is that what you're saying is it's not going to be easy to differentiate. And if I want to differentiate, I'll have to spend a lot of money to differentiate. Yes, because I'll really have to advertise.
You need to do a lot of research.
Yes, I'll have to do a lot of advertising.
Do a lot of research.
Yes. So you have to do research. You have to advertise. In fact, there's some very interesting information given here, and that is that what is the kind of money Yahoo is going to spend on advertising in the next 3, 4, 5 years to make itself popular. They're saying Yahoo is going to spend close to $500 million. Yes, about $500 million on advertising in one single year to actually make themselves known to people. And now if I really look at threat of new entrants, this actually says that the capital cost of entering into a business is bloody huge. So when I say threat of new entrants, say like all 14 of us here in this program could actually start a portal on our own, right? It looks like an interesting business, but now the question is what you're saying. We can't differentiate the product, right? So we have our interest areas, so we could write. But now the question is, how do I actually make it popular? So this leads us to a very important point here, that when I actually talk about threat of new entrants, it's not only about how easy is it to enter. The question is, how easy is it going to be, or how difficult it is going to be actually to make myself get accepted and make myself popular. So the money that is required here to make yourself popular is huge. It's about $500 million or whatever. So you're talking about completely different scale of operations. In fact, if you really have to create a brand today in this country also, you'll require at least 100 crores. In fact, like one interesting example, if you remember a guy called Pradeep Kar, he actually started a company called Microland, and they actually had a small portal called India.com, INDYA. I think a lot of you must be remembering that advertisement that came at that point in time when the title of Times of India was changed for a day. It said the Times of India, INDYA. And it was a launch thing for them, and they actually spent close to about 100 crores on their portal, and they actually just died down. They were probably the largest or the biggest capital destroyers in the world of internet in India. But then why do you think that happened? Because you were not able to get customers to stick around to you. So the entry seems to be easy, it's not there. So threat of entry and entrance has to be looked at from the perspective, how easy is it to actually maintain, and how easy is it going to be actually survive, and how easy is it actually going to be successful, make money out of this whole thing. So now the next thing, so if you really look at it, what do you think this company should do? Should it actually go for an acquisition? Should it actually go for a merger? in this situation? So you know the industry now. Substitutes, voters and everything that is there. You have bargaining power of suppliers, which is not something which is threatening, but bargaining power of buyers, that is people like you, me, advertisers, is very high. And then of course, when you talk about threat of new entrants, absolutely negligible. What do you think this company should do now? Just simply at looking at this industry analysis.
To me, I think we need to now, acquire the other, large players in the market. Basically to increase the base of content that they can deliver and increase the consumer base who interact with them.
Okay.
So that, they leave very little opportunity for the others to, kind of compete with them. So that would be one very important thing that they would have to do.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Great. So I'll just go to somebody else here. Let's see what Meena has to say, and then we'll actually go to Suresh. Yes, Meena.
The question is, what should Yahoo do now to?
Yeah.
Okay. See, okay. One thing is to increase the stickiness and increase the user engagement to their property. So they should increase. And I mean, the one thing is to, I think, the quality of that, the speed and reliability is one factor. That when the user comes and visits their site, I mean, the experience, the search experience or the user experience has to be very, should be nice. I mean, they should not wait endlessly for a particular site to open up. So that is one. So they have to invest on R&D and technology. The technology investment is one that they have to do. And another thing I would say is they should tie up with a search engine or a search company to, I think they eventually did with Google, but I mean, considering this case study in mind, I think they should have some kind of merger with a search company.
No, Yahoo was a search engine actually. Yes, it started as a
Yahoo,
search engine.
No, I think
it started as a search engine.
Started as a search engine, but somehow there was a dilution. They again went down to become a media company and a content provider. They moved from the hardcore search to portal business. So I think somewhere along the line, I think they deviated from that. If they go back to their core, I mean their core area where I mean when they started as a search, if they can invest in more in that, and then since they had a lot of Stanford graduates in their role, I mean it was written in the case study. So I think using their labor pool into the R&D.
Okay.
That would have been. So these are the two areas what I would say.
Perfect.
That they should do it.
Okay, so we have somebody here. Let me go to Divakar and see what Divakar has to say on this. A few final comments, and then I'll just give some closing remarks on this. Yes, Divakar.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was participating in the discussion all these hours. Being a generic industry, as we all have agreed that there is hardly any differentiation which is taking place across the board, be it Lycos, be it Excite, be it InfoSeek. I just wanted to know how relevant it will be to acquire any of these guys when the cost of switching is so very low, and the buyers are not sticking to, or my end users are not sticking to the portal. The average stay of any of the user is from 15 seconds to as high as probably 8 minutes. So does it make sense to invest the money in buying out any of these companies and hoping that these, say if I buy out Excite and they are having say 20 million users with them, so in a hope that these users will stick to me and my base from 35 million will go to 20 million, or should I invest in my existing capacities to ensure that these guys switch from Excite or Lycos to using Yahoo?
Okay, very interesting points, Divakar. If you really look at this is where the answer lies for this thing itself. Yes, so if you really look at it, what happens here is that what Yahoo did. In fact, it did not really, or it does not really make sense to acquire in this kind of situation, because I think the challenge is to increase that engagement with the customer. How do I engage it? It is not necessary to acquire, because there is a very different economics to acquisition of a company. Because what is going to be the kind of valuations that you will be looking at and so on and so forth. But very logically saying and looking at what happened in the past and what Yahoo did not acquire anybody at that point in time. Yahoo actually started going in for alliances. And that is when Yahoo, because it did not really make sense to really buy out, say, somebody like Excite or whatever. It made sense to actually go in for an alliance and probably just look at how you could share the base customers that you were actually talking about. So if you talk about 20 million customers from Excite, can I actually share those customers? Because these are the set of customers you're not very sure whether they're going to get revenues for you or not. Because there was no reason to believe that they could actually give you some additional revenues. So what we had to do is you had to actually tie up with some service providers to actually increase that level of engagement. That is the time when Yahoo started getting into things like Messenger and started giving better email services and so on and so forth. So that is what Yahoo did at that point in time. So in fact, if you really look at this whole thing, what we are really trying to say is, like, if we do a proper industry analysis, if I really see what are the triggers, and if I really understand how the bargaining power of buyers or suppliers, or what are the threat of new entrants and so on and so forth, if I really know, and if I really get a feel of it, I can actually strategize very, very well. So the first fundamental thing of building a strategy is to really understand how the industry is unfolding. If I've actually understood this, I can actually get my things right on strategy. And we'll start building up from here. But I have a question here for all of you. In fact, this is a real life case that has happened to a company based out of Gurgaon. So if you really look at a company like Genpact, everybody knows Genpact. So in fact, what used to be called as GE something at one point in time. So Genpact actually faced a major issue. In fact, they were facing a huge level of attrition at one point in time at their top level, people who were like team leads and so on and so forth. They had to control that attrition, because when you talk about people like labor, they are one of your important suppliers. If you're actually losing them very frequently and the attrition rates are about close to 50%, you're actually not able to sustain the business. What do you think Genpact would have actually done to really control this attrition? How could they have actually increased the exit barriers for their for the people who were working with them, and how could they have actually increased that barrier for or what do you call as barrier for disengagement for these employees? So I'll give you exactly 2 minutes to think through this, and I'll join you in 2 minutes. Just a short 2-minute break here, and I'll actually just join you in 2 minutes. वो डिटेक्ट हो जाएगी, आप उसको उल्टा डाल रहे हैं. मैं आपको दूसरी I have a second one. I have a second pen drive also. I'll give it to you. Yeah. Okay, hi. So getting back to the question that I have, what do you think Genpact can actually do? Okay, so we have Amit here who has sent me an answer. Yes, Amit. I can't hear you, Amit. Can you unmute your mic? We seem to have some technology issue. Just a second, we're just setting it right.
Hello.
Yes, Amit. Yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
All right. I think Genpact exactly offered some management or executive MBAs to their employees, so that they get tied up to their company for that particular duration of time. Let's say 2 years or 3 years. The employees, they need to be with the company. It's a kind of bond for that particular duration of time until they finish their executive MBA.
I know. So what you're saying is they started something with Duke University, but then the case of employees I'm talking about were fairly senior level guys, right? So they were team leads and everybody, and they were typically management professionals already. So what do you think they would have actually done? So this was not the answer, but then what you are saying is actually a good answer for employees who are probably at the middle level, right? But then what do you think they would have actually done?
Well, not exactly much ideas, but probably I wanted to share some more points on this issue, but it's somewhat correlated. I'll come back to it later on.
Okay, Amit. We can always talk offline because you're just sitting next to me, so we can always share these things when. Okay, okay. Let me just see what Vishu has to say about this from Chennai.
Hello?
Yes, Visu.
Okay. Actually, they came up with, there is a leadership program, IMLP, International Management Leadership Program. So through that, they have given opportunities for the senior folks to take different roles and move across the globe. And even they started with Genpact.
This is such a complicated, we should
given lot of.
This is hugely complicated. They did something which was absolutely fantastic and something which seems very naive, but they did something very powerful. And Rajiv has just sent me a message which says ESOP, but no, it was not even ESOP. They did something which was very simple. And you think, what do you think you could do? You have a problem here. People are leaving, and how do you stop them from leaving? So let's understand what is the category motivation. Last session we did talk about category motivation in terms of why people buy a few set of products. So we talked about the airline industry saying that why people were wanting, why people do not actually shift to something like airlines. For one simple thing, because it's actually expensive to travel on airlines. So what do you think is the biggest category motivation for people when they're actually with Genpact? Why do you think they would like to stick around, or why do you think you stick around with a certain company? One is quality of work. What is the other thing? What drives you in a company? Okay.
The value what they are seeing there.
Okay, the contribution that you make. That's what you want to say. Okay.
Recognition.
Okay, no, not really. I'll actually leave it here. In fact, so let's see. We have Sandeep from Bangalore. Let me just see.
Okay, I think providing clear career path to the employees at that level may stop them from leaving.
No, not really.
Okay.
No, it's not that. Anything else?
Rewards and recognition.
Okay, let's see what Abhiraman has to say, and then I'll actually give you an answer to this. We seem to have got into some kind of a jam here. Yes, Pattabhiraman.
Yeah, clear?
Yeah.
Audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, possibly, I'm not too sure as to what this company really did, but then possibly what they could have done is two things. One, at that level, the level which we are speaking, the senior level guys, make the salaries and benefits so much unaffordable that they really cannot bail out and look for options. The competitors really wouldn't be able to offer them so much, so they'll have to just shut up and keep quiet. probably live there for some more time.
Very simple thing. You can't do this. It will raise your cost of running a business, right? So you have to do something else. You have to find a better way, which is not expensive, right? Which does not increase your cost of employees, because with these kind, you're talking about 1,000 people here. In fact, I must share with you that they were able to reduce the attrition level to less than 5% a year after this decision. Okay, you'll actually, in fact,
or drop alliances with potential organizations who would really try to take this talent. Probably try and have some sort of an agreement with those companies, saying that these are the potential companies who are actually eyeing my kind of a talent in the organization. And for next probably 3 months or 6 months, probably once these guys leave, they will not be in a position to join them, or some sort of a gap there. And in that 6 months, 3 months, probably buy out some time and look at enhancing or providing them some sort of a skill set which is more harnessed, more tuned towards organization building. I don't know. It's just a thought.
No, not really. Anything else that comes to your mind?
Or simply try and understand what this category of people want in an organization. Like, it's a great brand to work with. It gives me great. It's a great knowledge hub. Probably some other thing which motivates this kind of an audience.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, not really. Okay. Let me ask somebody else, and then I'll actually get back to you.
Probably pull in their family members in this. Probably some sort of a bonding with the organization. And
okay, so get multiple people to work. What do you call in the organization? No, not really. It was not the case. Okay, let me just see. In fact, I'm just sending you a question here. I'll give you an answer. Just tell me what do you think about what Genpact did. In fact, you know what Genpact did was they actually, the biggest motivation for an Indian is actually the title or the position that you actually have. So you have huge levels of titular expectations. And what these guys did was that they actually, made everybody as a vice president. They actually made 1,000 people as vice presidents in Genpact. With 30,000 people, Genpact has 1,000 vice presidents today. And in fact, if you really look at it, the salary of vice president varied from something called as 8 lakhs to 2 crores. And then suddenly everybody was a vice president, and they suddenly increased the exit barrier for a person. And because he had a huge motivation that I'm a vice president. If I want to go somewhere else, I have to be a vice president. It's something like this. And then they just got into a jam there, and they were just not able to they did not lose people. So that it was a very simple thing. So if you really look at a 5 forces analysis, I think what we have to do is a very simple bit of analysis. Just try to understand the category motivations, and then why people do a few sets of things, and then find answers. I think strategy is about finding those simple answers. It's not about those huge big answers at points in time. Sure. So this is what I really wanted to do on 5 forces today. In fact, moving to the next thing that we have to do, we are just left with about 15 minutes of our session, and I cannot actually start with the next case, and that is on Dell. So what we'll do is we'll actually discuss the Dell case the next time, and but I'll actually try to give you a small exercise this week, and I would expect that all of you actually do this analysis, and I would expect some written analysis to come through this time. So I just need 1 page 5 forces analysis of the Dell case that you need to send across to me. So if you I'll just give you a genesis for what this case was all about, or what this case on Dell is all about. If you really look at it, the computing industry is going through a hugely messy situation in terms of it's a very unattractive industry for a simple reason that people are not making money, right? So my first question is, why do you think people are not making money in this industry? So you need to do your 5 forces very well to understand why do you think people are not making money making money in this industry. So do that 5 forces and send it across to me. Make sure that you send this analysis 1 page, just draw the 5 forces for me and send it across to me by Friday, so that we are able to actually understand it in a so this is the kind of analysis. So if you really talk about suppliers or buyers, just write your points here, and that is what I'm looking at. And for buyers on the other side, so why do you think Dell is not really why do you think the computer industry is not making money? The second question is, Dell actually did something exceptional, and they did wonders, and they made lots of money. Why do you think Dell was able to make so much of money? What do you think Dell did to actually make such levels of money? What was their competitive advantage? What was their competencies that they actually focused on, and so on and so forth? And then, of course, the third thing that I really want to ask you is, if you really look at it, a lot of people tried to copy Dell, but they were not able to copy Dell. Why do you think they were not able to copy Dell? So a few sets of hints here in terms of like what you should actually read and how you should actually answer. The first one is that we have to do a 5 forces analysis. In fact, there is a reading that has been given to you in the case, and that is a reading called Creating Competitive Advantage. So I would want you to go through that reading, and you would actually be able to answer the second question very well after you've actually read that reading. And in fact, what I mean is that you should look at the value chain or look at the supply chain and see what Dell actually did to be successful. So make that assessment as well. And the third thing is like why others were not able to copy Dell. So I think the value chain would actually give you the answer there itself. So last 2 questions, the first question is the 5 forces model. The next 2 questions, that is like why Dell was able to do well and why others were not able to copy Dell, would come through the 5 forces analysis, by way of value chain analysis and the reading, Creating Competitive Advantage. So I want you to do these exercises. Please do send me your analysis of the 5 forces analysis for the Dell case by Friday. Okay, now I have a small announcement to make, that since we are actually going into the next step of this course, this is the time when we would actually want to start working on the project. So my general feel would be that people who are from Delhi and Gurgaon, if you could actually sit down and meet for about half an hour one of these days to really discuss your project and take it forward. So people in Gurgaon, if you could actually meet me this week sometime. So you have my telephone numbers. In case if you don't have my telephone number, you could always give me a call, and we could just set up the time when we have to meet, or you could just send me an email at my email address. So that is amit@amitkapoor.com. So just send me an email and we'll set up the time when we could actually meet. So I'll request you to come down to MDI, and we could just meet over your project, discuss what you're trying to do, and just cover up a few things there. For people who are outside Delhi and Gurgaon, so what we could do is we could set up a con call. And so if we can set up a con call during this week, and if we can spend about 15-20 minutes, that will be great. So what we could do is a conference call could be actually done on Skype. So my Skype ID is Amit Kapoor. So you could just send me an invite and we'll actually talk on Skype. So we'll fix up a timing for this week. I'll want to spend about at least 15-20 minutes with each one of you to understand the project and taking it forward, so that we are able to start working on the projects right now. I've actually gone through the proposal that you sent across. So now if you really want to make a few changes, and if you think the way we are trying to do things, so you want to actually really relook at the project or whatever, but now we'll freeze it and we'll have about close to, I would rather think about 8 weeks to really finish the project and get something out of it. So this is what my next thing is. So send me an email by say tomorrow. Gurgaon people to meet me, and Delhi people I can meet some of them on next weekend. We'll spend about half an hour each with all of you. So for next week we'll actually do 2 cases. In fact, according to the schedule, we should actually be doing a case on Dell, and we will be doing a case on Starbucks. So I would want you to actually do both these cases. In fact, we are going to add 1 case to the program. In fact, there is a case on strategy and location, and there is just 1 case on Indian flow mills. So you'll actually receive 1 additional case from me that we are actually going to do. So a small change in terms of like we just adding 1 more case and things. So we will actually reduce 1 session somewhere from, say, we'll reduce the session on Medici effect from 2 sessions to 1 session. So a little bit of a rejig here to really cover most or create a maximum impact for the course. So next two cases, matching Dell and Starbucks. That's what we are actually going to do next week. And I hope you're all going to be prepared. So I'll request all of you to actually read the documents and come over. So we will not really do much now. So we just left with about some 5 minutes. Let's come back next week and we will do the cases. And be well and good luck. Okay, now one last thing actually. In fact, next week I would want, if some of you would want to share your project ideas with the group and really take some suggestions and really get something out of it. So I would want each one of you, whosoever is interested, to spend about close to 5 minutes speaking about your projects and talking to the group and seeing how we could actually learn from each other. So that will actually be a good point of really starting an association, going on together and working together. So that is what I'll really want you to do next week as well. So these are a few things that we have to do next week. Sure, so thanks a lot. Be well in the meanwhile. Enjoy yourself and be well. Thank you.